Hello. Today's lesson is on paraphrasing, and in particular, paraphrasing as contextual lead-in. This is for evidence statements, meaning if you're writing an analytical paragraph, whether it be on character or theme or whatever, you have to paraphrase when you're using evidence from a narrative text, like a short story, novel, etc. And I want to say first up front, like, why does this matter? If you're skeptical, that's great. And so the reason for teaching this, the reason for learning this and building this skill is simply that context is key. It's hard to understand the full meaning of text evidence without important details of who, what, when, and where. Otherwise, if we just throw a quote on the page without contextualizing it, right, telling all the information we need by way of paraphrasing to make sense of it, it's going to be really difficult for a reader to understand the point we're trying to make. So, write down this definition: paraphrase. A paraphrase is a restatement of a text, passage, or work, giving the meaning in another form. And that's something we really do every day. Anytime you have a conversation with someone else and then your friend is a little nosy about it and they say, hey, what did they say? And if you don't quote them exactly, you're paraphrasing. Why is this important? It helps you to control the temptation to quote too much or too long. It makes your text evidence make sense to a reader, even if they haven't read the story before. And the deeper thinking required for successful paraphrasing truly helps you to get smarter. So here's an example so you can see what I mean. I'll go over steps as to how to do this, but here's what an evidence statement would look like from our in-class writing so far, where you just say, for example, and then you put a quote down there. And then this is what it's going to look like as we add paraphrasing. All right, so we could just say, oh, Treetop was a loyal friend, for example, but we both know the difference was forever away a whole lifetime. And you're like, I don't know. Is that a strong evidence? Maybe, maybe not. But with paraphrasing, as Treetop learns that her best friend Celeste will move away, the friends try to make plans to stay connecting while realizing that things will never be the same. But we both knew the distance was forever away, a whole lifetime. So what are we doing here? This is the paraphrasing. Restating a text or a passage and giving it in another form, right? So like what this is, in a way, is kind of like a summary. So I'm letting a reader know what's happening in the story before I put that quote in, which really makes it make more sense. So how do we do this? 4 steps: reword, rearrange, realize, and recheck. And you have this in your handout, but if you don't have a handout for some reason, you could take notes on this. So first, you got to be doing some rewording. And just a little quick note, these steps can work for both an informational text as well as a narrative text. So if you are paraphrasing from a story, it might be a lot more obvious that, yeah, you're going to have to do a lot of rewording. You're going to have to say it in a different way. Where this becomes even more important is if you are, say, reading something in history or in science, and instead of just quoting it, you paraphrase it. You really got to make sure that you rearrange, that you realize that certain parts can't be changed, like names and dates, and that you recheck again to make sure the meaning is the same, but the wording is different, right? So paraphrasing means same meaning, different form. All right, and so here's a little video of what paraphrasing kind of might look like or sound like in a narrative text. So this is director John Krasinski, director and actor, breaking down a little bit of a scene from Quiet Place.
Hey, I'm John Krasinski, and these are notes on a scene from A Quiet Place. John Krasinski's not the name you would think of as like, can't wait to see a horror movie by that guy. And the reason why is because I wouldn't think that either until I read this script originally by these amazing writers, Beck and Woods. And they had this incredible idea of a family that had to live quietly or else they would die. And to me, this whole movie's about family. It is not a horror movie. I mean, it is a horror movie, but to me, the theme of family and what would you really do for your kids is the reason why I did the movie. So this is one of my favorite scenes because it's a movie about a family that needs to remain quiet. This is such a perfect atmosphere and one of the best scenes to tell the rules of how to remain quiet and what happens if you don't. These Monopoly pieces we thought of for a long time. You can see we kept the same colors. So these reds are still hotels, but they're fluff balls from a craft store. So the kids, because of the mother being such a loving mother, she wants them to feel that they have a normal existence, even though they have anything but. And all the pieces are obviously things from her crafts or sewing kit or something like that so that the kids can play but not make noise. We knew that sound would not only be a main character, but it would be the character. It's actually the thing that frames the entire movie together. But more than that, it became about adhering to rules. What sounds literally that the audience hears are too dangerous, which ones aren't. It's impossible to live silently, and we knew that. So we wanted to bring the audience through this idea of living as quietly as possible. This is that old theory of loading a gun at the beginning of the scene to build tension, and this lantern will obviously become a huge part of the scene in that it is the first major noise you hear. As an audience, you've been given this entire field of information of how this family is living and why they're living that way. But the one thing you haven't gotten yet is what happens if they do make a sound. And so one of the first big noises in the movie will be from this lantern. This is a live fire, which, let's be honest, probably not the smartest thing to do around children, but Noah made it clear that he wanted to do it. He wanted to be a part of it and keep it real because he understood what we were trying to do with the movie, that if we cut away to a stunt person or did it in post, it wouldn't feel as real and authentic. This was a last minute idea I actually had. The noise he was supposed to make was just a noise. The fire aspect of it I thought was so much more interesting because the barn is so warm, but also looks like a giant tinderbox and adds more tension. But it was one of those things that when it hit, it was so perfect because my character runs over and puts it out and it was all live. So this take actually happened completely live on two different cameras so that we could capture that feeling of tension.
All right. So then you can see, like, yes, we see the action, but then he is using words to describe it, to put it in a different way.
Hey, I'm John Krasinski, and these are notes on a scene from A Quiet Place.
All right. So this is from the handout that you have, and I just want to talk you through it. So, important note, when you are creating an evidence statement from a narrative, literary text, right, something that's a story, you need to contextualize that quote by paraphrasing. So either way, like even if you were to only paraphrase, you still have to have a parenthetical citation. So I just want to make that super clear. You're always going to need to have that says Woodson, whatever, right? The author's last name and a page number. That paraphrasing part needs to be in your own words. If it's not, then it's not a paraphrase. It still needs to be accurate, so you can't change the meaning. Same meaning, right? Same story, different form. And now this is a part I want you to write this down because this is a great formula, a great recipe, you could say, for an academically excellent evidence statement. Transition, contextual lead-in, evidence, and then your parenthetical citation. I guess I don't technically have a transition here, although like as just it kind of flows into it nicely, but you could use something like for example or to illustrate. That's how you would do that. So you know what? Let me change it right now. For example, here we go. For example, as Treetop learns that her best friend Celeste will move away, the friends try to make plans to stay connected while realizing that things will never be the same. So, transition, for example, contextual lead-in, all this stuff where I'm summarizing what's going on in the story. Evidence, there you have it. I cut it a little bit. That's why we've got the ellipses. And then the citation, you close the quotes, space, Woodson 132, that's the page number, close the parentheses, and then the period at the end. All right, that's the whole thing. Now we're going to do some practice. You're going to find this evidence in your reading binder. So you'll need to turn to page 124 if you're following along in class or independently at home. And you need to reread a little bit of what's going on before you encounter this quote, so that you can make your own contextual lead in. So I said to my father, I want to move through the world that quietly, that powerfully. Read the paragraph or two above that so that you can add your own, for example, da 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 quote. All right. And then the next one, what kind of name is treetop anyway, et cetera, et cetera. Right. So I have this written out just right for you. You can see the 2 quotes, the 1 quote, right? Because it's a quote within a quote. That's why you have the little 1, the 1 and the 2. So your job is to read above this on page 124 and then read above this on page 128 and create your own contextual lead in.